Hello, I'm Laura Rogers, and welcome to Power Hour. This is Joelle Jobson in the little window, and this is a show we've been doing for about 10 years. Our topic today is Power Platform Environment Variables and how to create variables so that you can have your SharePoint data in like a dev and a production site in SharePoint, and then be able to have take your whole solution like Power Apps and Flows and be able to move it from dev to production, and the variables just tell it where the URL is of the site and where it can find that data. So let's get started with the stinger. All right, so welcome again. And if you're joining, if you've never joined in the chat before, there is a link at the bottom of wherever you're watching this to fill out the form to join the chat in Teams. So we chat in Teams, and the fun thing about it is it's a live demo, so you never know what's going to happen. So we have, fun, lively conversation, questions, discussions about kind of everything we do in here. So again, our topic, let me give you sort of a more thorough overview. You have this concept that a lot of times you like to have a more formal process of creating and deploying apps and solutions and flows, and you like to have a development area to be able to create the solution and work on it and test it. And then you like to have, once it's ready and done and ready to go live, you move it to production, and then that you have a separate sort of location, separate set of data, separate app that's your production version. And then if you want to make changes later, then you would go work on the development version of it and test it there and have a whole separate set of data and have a whole separate app, and then you can make all your changes again and then be able to take it and officially move it from dev to production. So that's what we're going to cover today, this concept of environment variables that allow you to have a variable for basically the location of the URL for where that SharePoint site and list is. And then so that it just changes. It can be different without you having to go in and make a whole bunch of edits to your apps and your flows. The variable can just change and be different in the different environments. So in our example, what we're going to do, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to start off, I've created so the concept we're going to do is to have like HR onboarding. So I've created this HR dev site and an HR production site. So what we're going to do, and what the concept that we do in pretty much most of the solutions we do, right, Joelle, is just have a backend SharePoint list that the users aren't necessarily going to the site. And so this site, this dev site and this production site is really just, you can see it's very plain Jane, like I just created it, it's just out of the box. It's not necessarily where the users are going to be going. So we're just using this to store those backend lists. I mean, of course you could have a SharePoint site and you could have users going there. You could have a link to where your Power App is, and you can have all your lists stored in it. But what I like to do most of the time is have a list that the users aren't necessarily ever going to go to or know where it is. And that's the backend data for the list. Now, we've had a whole separate Power Hour. I've written a blog post about that whole concept of having your Power App as a front end. And so it's my blog post called Power Apps as a Front End. So that whole concept is covered separately. But so what we're going to cover here is just having a list and having two different sites and having a Power App based off of that list and having a flow. And then that's going to be my solution, like my HR onboarding solution. And then I'm going to take that solution and work on the Power App, create the flow, get it all ready, and then move it from dev to production and show you how all that works. And it's live, so you never know what's going to happen. So say hello in the chat. We have, let me see, what did I do with my chat window? Here we go. If you're joining us for the first time, you'll be added to this Power Hour team here, and go to the general channel. And then we have tabs for each Power Hour. So this is today's tab. You'll see the video here, and then you can pop out the little sort of the conversation here. So that is how you can watch the video and then chat with us while we go. So thanks for the picture of the king cake, Larry. All right, move that out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create. I haven't even created anything yet. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new list. I'm just going to show you what this looks like as just completely custom. I'm not going to make this complicated by using one of these templates. I'm just going to use a new name. So I'll call it new hire list. And then go ahead and create that. And then again, this is the whole point of this is not really what all the columns are going to be and what the solution is or does. It's really just the concept of moving it from dev to production. So I'm just going to keep this really simple. I'm going to say we've got a new hire. I'll say just give it just a few columns like first name and last name and phone number or something like that. And then I'll just do like a number column. So I'll do age, I don't know, age, and I'll do just one more. I'll do like a birthday. Move out of the way. Okay, got it. Date. Okay, don't need time. Okay. And then the title is going to be, let's see, what can their title be? The title is like going to be like the job title that they're applying for. So I'll just leave it called title. Okay, so that is my list, and that is called new hire list. It's in the dev site. And then I'm going to create an identical list over in the production site so that we have two identical lists, and one is going to be where our development data is, and one of them is going to be the actual real data. So I'm going to go ahead and create just a couple of people in here. Let's see, PA developer, George Jetson. I like George Jetson. He's pretty young though. There. Okay, so then we have somebody in this one, and then the production site, we have to create that list. So I'm going to say new list, and then this time, since I already created it, it needs to be identical. So the two lists need to be identical. So it really helps if you go ahead and use, just go ahead and copy, from an existing list. Because if you do it where you create all the columns from scratch and you're not starting from an existing list, you need to make sure and type every name of every column like identical to the way you typed them before as you create each column. Like spaces and everything need to be identical. Okay, so there's my new hire list, and that is my production one. So I can see that this one it's empty. When you create based off of another list, it doesn't create it with stuff in it. It's just empty. So then I'll call this one programmer Bob the Builder. I put the age and the date of birth on that last one I did. Didn't really make sense, did they? There we go. Whatever. I just wanted to have different columns of different types in this list so you could see that. Okay, so now that I've got all these lists created, let me sort of move this over here. Now we're going to go through the process of creating a solution. So the solution is where we need to create when we're doing basically a business solution like this, where we want to be able to use environment variables and move it from different, across different environments to test, dev, production, things like that. You always start with a solution. So I'll create a new solution and I'll call it HR onboarding. And then I'll create, let's see, I'll just select my default publisher. I'm not going to get into too much about like what publishers are and concepts having to do with some of the solutions in Power, in the Power platform. That could take a whole separate hour. I'm just going to leave this pretty simple. I'm just giving the solution a name and clicking create. So creating the solution might take a couple minutes. So inside of the solution, so that's why step one is always to create the solution, because then once the solution is created, you create your Power Apps and your flows from inside it. Now you could, there is a way that you could create it, have it created ahead of time and then put it in the solution. But when you're starting from scratch, the easiest way to do it is to just start from a new solution and build the things from inside the solution. So I'll say new app, Canvas app. Canvas apps are always that type of apps I create, and I'll call it onboarding, or it was new hire, the new hire app. And again, this one is going to be very simple because I'm not going to get overwhelmed with what it looks like or making it pretty. I'm just going to make it so that it has a little bit of stuff in it. Now, the first thing that I want to do is the important part of being able to create the environment variables is this setting. So let me go ahead and make sure and save my app first. Make sure it, you know how when you first create a Power App, sometimes it actually hasn't saved itself yet, and you could do a bunch of work and then completely lose your work if you don't like actually save it again after you first create it. So that's what I was just doing, clicking save again. Okay, so you go to the settings, and then you go to automatically create environment variables when adding data sources. So enable the automatic creation of environment variables when connecting to data. Environment variables allow you to change data sources within solutions. Okay, so that means when we add SharePoint as our data in the app, it will automatically create those. That's how the environment variables get created. And this is specifically because it's SharePoint data and it needs to have the URL to that SharePoint site needs to be a variable. So then it just gave me a message when I did that I need to be sure, and it says refresh the app. I'm just going to completely close the app and then go back into it. So I'll go back, leave the app, and then let's see, let me go. So now I can see it here in my solution. This is the only thing that I have. So now I'll go back in and work on it some more. And then from there, then after you've turned on the setting, then you can go ahead and add your data. So go to the little data tab here, add data, search for SharePoint. And then I'll put, let's see, there's my HR dev site. It's right there. I'll just click on that. And then there's that new hire list that I just created. So that is my data, because this is my dev. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me make sure I'm showing you the right thing. So see what environment I'm in here? When I'm in this environment, the environment is what you need to pay attention to as far as where you're moving to from one thing, like where you're actually taking the whole solution and moving it from one environment to another. So now this one's tricky because depending on what your licensing is for your tenant, you might have different options available. Like if you just have sort of an E1 license and very low cost everything, then it might tell you that you don't have a license to let you create multiple environments. So I'm just creating my environment in this dev one, just in the default environment. And I'm gonna, when I'm moving it to production, I'm going to just be going to a different environment and importing the solution into that other environment. So that's where the environment, that's where you need to pay attention to what environment you're in when you first start creating the solution and creating everything, so that it will, so that you are starting from the right place. So because I could toggle to other environments. So I don't know, I think that's what, now I like to not mess up when I'm doing this live, but I feel like I should have gone to the dev demo before I started doing this. I don't think it's going to hurt to move. Let me just, yeah, I'm just going to close this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create this in dev so that I can move it to default is always going to have the name of your company and then whatever, and then the word default next to it. So Contoso is like the fake name of the company in this environment. And also the cool thing about these is that you all, this is the environment that you all are in. This is the tenant you all are in during power hours. So theoretically, y'all would be able to go in and use this Power App when we're done and be able to try out and see both versions of it. So we'll see if I can get that all done in an hour. All right, so let me close this. And instead of trying to delete this, I'm just going to put a different name on it. Sorry about that. All right. So I'm going to start at Power Apps. And the trick, the step that I missed, and this whole environment variables thing, there are a lot of important things that you could miss and do wrong and then have to go back. Like it's riddled with little sort of gotchas like that to pay attention to. So I'll go to Dev Demo. So now I'm in the Dev Demo. That's really where I need to have my Dev app and my Dev flows and my Dev data all in the Dev Demo environment. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions? Let me know kind of as we go, or Joelle, shout it out if they do. So I go to Solutions, and I can see in my Dev environment I created, it came with a few solutions. I'll just do this. HR onboarding for reals. That's the one. This is the one, not the one that I messed up. Okay, default publisher, and then create for reals. Has anybody done this before? What do you all think? Is this something that you have that's a requirement for the solutions that you create in your company? I work with a lot of small and medium-sized companies that don't necessarily, everything just is pretty small and simple, so you don't need to go through all these measures, but you know, it is a common question. That's my new new hire app. Okay, so I didn't get to the part where I add any data to it yet. So I'm going to go show you those steps again and wait for this little wheel to stop spinning and then go to the settings. So that's the first thing you need to do before you start pulling in your connections to those SharePoint lists is turn that setting on. So I'll go here, automatically create environment variables. Okay, got it. You don't have to click save, you just close it, save the app again, and then that's when it says, it gave you the message and lets you know that you need to go refresh it. So I'll just close it and go back in. And this is where I left off. So I really only lost like a minute or two in my mess up. Okay, so here's my new hire. Does everybody get that so far? Hopefully. And so also pay attention when you're creating other environments because sometimes it might want to charge you. It might want to say, you know, add this to your subscription. So kind of pay attention to if it's going to charge you a cost to be able to have that other environment as well. Okay, so now I've got the setting turned on. I've got the app back pulled back open, and my data, SharePoint, connect. So it's creating a new connection. My SharePoint is in the cloud. So this particular environment, I never had a SharePoint connection yet. So I'll go HR dev site, new hire list. So now I'm in the dev demo environment and I have my dev site data. And now what I'm going to do is just add a couple of very quick things. I'm just really going to put a gallery on here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time creating forms and multiple screens and things like that. I'm just going to say, insert a gallery, and just so we can see the items in there, so we can double check that those are the right items. So this one's PA developer George Jetson. That's the one that I created in the dev site, George Jetson. So that's how we can see that that's what that data is. All right, so there is my lovely app. It's beautiful. What do you think, Joelle? You think it's ready for production? It's amazing. I can look at my list of new hires. Okay, so then it's letting me know one or more environment variables were created. So the setting worked, and it's got a link to manage them, which is really just going to take me to my solution. So I'll go ahead and usually you don't have to click save and separately click publish, but I just want to kind of show you where those buttons are. I'll go ahead and publish this version. So what you'd be doing is you'd be testing this. Everybody that you need to be the testers, you'd give access to this data in the dev site, and you'd share this app with them, and they'd all be working on it. So what I can do is in the dev site, my new hire list, I wonder if I can just add everyone in here. I don't think I can though, since y'all are all external users. Let's see, maybe I can put Power Hour in here and add that as a permission level, so that what I want to do is for y'all to be able to like test the app. Let's see. Power Hour members. I'll refresh this. I'll need to do this over in the production one too. So this is the dev one. And then I'll give Power Hour members contribute. And then I'll go to my Power App. Now I'm going to go exit my Power App. And you will be able to go just when you're looking at the main Power Apps list, you will see your Power App listed just in your regular list of Power Apps. But you can also go into the solution and see the Power App listed here. So it's not two different apps, it's just two different ways to get to it. And then I've got, so here's my Canvas app right here, and here's that environment variable that I created for the site. And then here's the environment variable that I created for the list. And I can go, let's see, to my list of apps here and share it. Let's see, Power members. Ooh, I don't know if it's, no, let's try that one. I don't know if that's going to share it with y'all though. I think I might have to add everybody individually and remember that we had a whole other Power Hour about Power Apps and external users. So you'd actually you'd have to have the Power Apps license in whatever tenant you're in, if you're an external user in my tenant, just to be able to use Power Apps. So I'll uncheck that. I'm not sure if that's going to share it with you all, but I'm not going to spend too much time trying to get it to share it with y'all. Okay, so then I've got my Power App now as part of this same solution. Let me refresh this. Oops, look, I've got one tab over here with this environment, and then this other browser tab, I've got my dev environment. So I want to make sure that I'm in my dev environment and I see my HR onboarding solution that I created. So for the flow, again, you want to try and remember to create the flows in the Power Apps right when you create them, do it from within the solution. And I'm just going to click to create that and click skip. And I can create a couple of different, I'll just create a couple of different flows. Let's see, SharePoint, get items, and it's getting that connection. And then here is where you're going to want to use your environment variable. So that's a little different than what you're used to. So it's wanting to prompt you, and you're used to just picking a site here for just hard coding whatever your site is to into your flow, but you want to go enter custom value and then look at that. So here is where your environment variables will show. So we created them from within the Power App. We saw them in the solution. Then we created this flow in the solution. We can see that these are what we have to choose from. So I'll choose my dev site, and then for the list, instead of picking new hire list here, I'll choose enter custom value and choose new hire list, because that's also a variable. And then it's just going to get the items, and then I'll click save. Oh, I didn't give it a cool name. I'll have to change my name. And I wonder what the flow checker is telling me. That's weird. I've got one action and it's already giving me an error. Let's see. I get a lot of fake ones though. Like, yeah, get items to use OData. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just that one where it's suggesting that you get a smaller list of items. Okay, and then I could run that and just make sure that it works. Just make sure that it finishes. It's making me sign into SharePoint, run the flow. And then I'll go create another one. Maybe I want to have a flow that sends an email when somebody creates a new hire. And you could, if it's a new hire process, you could even have, a field that says who is their new manager and send an email to whoever the new manager is and different things like that. I'm going to keep this really simple. I'm just going to send an email to whoever just created that. Let's see. Okay, so here are my flows inside of, so this is all listing me all the stuff inside of this solution. I'm not going to add an existing flow. I'm going to add a new flow. And this one I'm going to say new hire. new hire email. And then my trigger is going to be SharePoint when an item's created. And it's going to be that new hire list. So again, when you're in the flow that's in your solution with the environment variable, be sure and choose the environment variable for the site and custom value and your list here. So when an item's created, I'll just send an email. And it's creating an Outlook connection now. How's everybody doing, Joelle? Pretty quiet. Oh, those are very, very specific. Okay, I'll just say send an email to whoever just created this. Thanks.
Yeah, they were just having a discussion on sharing Power Apps.
Sharing Power Apps.
Yeah, like whether you can do it with guest users and the fact that you can't use a Microsoft 365 group and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so it's just going to be triggered when a new item gets created, and it's just going to send an email to whoever created the item. And then we're going to go look at what all is inside of that solution now. So now when I click this little HR onboarding for Reels, see it's narrowed down to cloud flows right now, but I can go back to all, and that's showing me everything that's in the solution. So remember, we started out with a brand new blank solution. So what all is this stuff? It tells you what type it is over here in this column. So this is the environment variable for the site itself. This is my flow to go get the items. This is my flow this is my Canvas app for the new hire. This is my new hire list. This is the flow. So you can see it's really helpful to have a solution. It's kind of like a folder that helps you keep everything together for whatever business solution you're creating. And then these are the connections that I used. I used a SharePoint connector and an Outlook connector to like when I was creating the flow and the Power App. And it puts them all in here. And so let me go. This is the next step. This is kind of weird. But when I click on this HR dev site, see it says remove this value before exporting if it shouldn't be used in other environments. So this value is not the one that I'm going to be using in other environments. I'm going to be using a different SharePoint site. It's going to have a different value in other environments. And the list is going to have a different value because it will be a different GUID in the other environment. So it just says basically to remove it. So I'm going to remove from this solution. Yeah, see, it's got a list of all the sites I could pick from. And then it's got it empty. So that's a little weird, a little counterintuitive that you have to remove that before you export it. And so I do that for this environment variable and also for this other one for the new hire list. But it does tell you, it has a message saying to remove it before exporting. So remove this value before exporting. Okay. And then I've got my whole solution is going to be what I export. And that's the whole thing that I'm going to take and move from, here's my dev environment, and move it to my production environment. So I'm going to publish all customizations, which is like taking a step to publish it. I don't think we're not doing anything that in what we're doing that really requires that it be published or not, but I went ahead and published all customizations. And then I'm going to be able to, let me go back to here and export this whole solution. So when I export it, yeah, it wants me to publish all changes. I could have sworn I just did that, but whatever. And it's publishing them again. I'm not sure why it didn't know that I just did that. And then I'm not going to check for issues. It'll be fine, but that actually takes a few minutes. So the difference between managed and unmanaged, this is going to be unmanaged. So if I wanted it to be managed, that would mean that whatever solution I created, all the apps and flows inside of it, if it's managed, then whenever I export it and take it somewhere else, that other location, they're not going to be able to modify those apps, edit them or anything. They're just going to be ready to go and users will just start using them. So there's no editing them in the other place if it's managed. So it's unmanaged, then that means I want there to be edits to be able to be made in both places. So that's kind of up to you. Theoretically, you would think you'd want it to be managed just to make sure that you have complete consistency between your dev and your production. And you know that when you save changes and you export and import it again into production, you're not going to lose any changes you made in production. Like you probably don't want to be making changes in production, right? You want to make sure that all the changes are made in dev. But I'm going to make it unmanaged for today. And so now it's currently exporting it. So that is going to be a file that it exports and spits out. And that I'll be able to take that file and go to the other environment. So I'll be able to take HR onboarding for Reels and go import it over into the other environment. Now, if I went over to, you could go to a completely different tenant. The thing about going to a different tenant is that that SharePoint list, I don't have another tenant that has that SharePoint list. So what I'd have to do is go create that SharePoint list exactly the same in another tenant. And then that way I'd have the location to point to be able to use that SharePoint list. It was just easier to do everything in the same tenant for this demo because when I created that second list, I was able to just create it using the first list as the template. So that's why I'm just kind of staying all in the same tenant here, just different. Okay, so I'm going to download this. It says it finished, it exported successfully. So I'm downloading that to my computer, HR onboarding for Reels. And then I'm going to switch over to the other environment. My default, this is my live, this is my production environment. So now this is that one I created earlier, errantly. And I'm going to go ahead and create, import the solution I created, browse to my computer, go get, let's see, my downloads, HR onboarding for Reels, next. And let's see. Roseanne says, I love solutions. Can you use them in an environment without a Dataverse? Yes, you don't need to have a Dataverse. I don't think I created a Dataverse, a database in this production environment that I created here. Because if you don't need to use Dataverse, then you don't need to have a database. Lisa says, what are the downsides of solutions? It's just a couple of extra steps. I think that's the only thing I can think of that would be a downside is that you have to remember to go into the solution when, you know, to go, and then when you add new things and you add new flows to go try and remember to go create them in the solution. So it's just another thing to remember to do instead of just, you might be used to just going straight to the Power Apps web, page or straight to the flow page. And this way you'd be going to solutions first and using that as sort of like a folder system to get to sort of your organized solutions. Okay, I'm importing my solution. Okay, so here's where it's got reestablish connections to activate your solution. If you create a connection, you must refresh. You will not lose your import progress. So these are basically the two connectors. Remember I used those in the flows in the Power App, and that's letting me know that those are the connections that it's mapping to. I don't think I need to change either of these. They look fine. If I had multiple SharePoint connectors in my environment, I might, I could switch to another one. All right, and then here's my HR dev site. So this is where we map which site needs to be the production site, because now I'm in production. So now instead of I'm not using the HR dev site, I'm using the HR production site. And then instead of, and then it's just going to show me the only things in this site are documents in a new hire list. So that's where you change it. That's where you tell it now those environment variables are now going to have this as their data, this new URL. Make sense? So when you are, moving it from one place to another, the only thing that you really need to change is right there in that one step where you point the environment variable to a new site. Now, if you forget to delete it first before you export the solution, then you can go, so I'll go into, it says it's currently importing it, so let me wait a second. You can go into the solution and you still have that setting inside of each environment variable where you can go change what it's pointing to. But if you delete it ahead of time, then you don't have to take that extra step. So I guess it's just an extra step either way. Let's see, it's currently importing. Let me toggle away and go back and see if no, it's still importing. Any questions, Joelle? Anything important? Let's see.
Yeah, I guess they were saying that.
Okay.
Nick mentioned that you need a Dataverse database, but I don't think you have to. It's not something you have to use, right? I think it's just you have to create something there.
Okay, good to know.
Because I know I've
created
solutions without.
Okay. That makes sense, because I thought I had unchecked the box to not create a database, but I think that when I saw a bunch of information in there, it created it anyway, or checked the box for me anyway. So yeah, so I'm not using Dataverse, but apparently it is in there. And I have to make sure when I'm done here to make sure that I'm not getting charged for that other environment that I created, or I might just go delete the whole thing, just because I don't want it just to have created it and let it sitting out there and charging me for something. So be careful about that stuff. Okay, so here's my solution. It finished importing. So now I've got everything in it. I've got, it still is called HR Dev Site, and it's still, of course, called New Hire List. So it's not going to change the name and be called something else, but it is pointing to that new location. And here's everything that I need in here. So now let's go open up that Power App and see if it's pointed to the production list. So the production list has Bob the Builder in it. So I'll go over to, I'm just going to go to my main. So when I just go to my list of apps here, I can see that this is production and this is where the app ended up. So when I go open that app, it should show Bob the Builder as there he is. So now this is my app. This is the production version of my app. And this is pointing to the production version of my data. Wow, that went by a lot faster than I thought it was going to. Any questions? I feel like I need to add more data to it or something. We can go dig around.
There's a couple questions.
What was that?
There are questions.
Okay. Larry says, is delete prior to export persistent? Do you have to do it each time? Once you delete it, it looks like it's just gone. And then next time you export, then it's already deleted. We can go double check though. So what I can do is toggle back over to my other environment. And then first of all, I can go test and make sure that my app is still functioning after I deleted that little piece from the connection. What is that? Oh, y'all added some people. Cool. So this is my dev site that I gave y'all access to. So y'all added some people to it. So this is my developers testing the app. And then here they are. and that one works. So it didn't break anything when I deleted that sort of reference to that URL. So let me go in here again and double check. And yeah, it stays empty. So the next time I export this solution, now if I go and add more SharePoint lists to my app, then it'll probably create new items here for the new lists that I add, and I add more, add more connectors, it would add them here. But if I'm just always using the same site and this is not going to change, then that I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do that again. I would just, okay, pretend that I've put it in production, months go by, people are using it, need to make some changes. I go back here into dev, and then I go to my dev version of the Canvas app, and I make changes to it, and I have the developers test it with the test data. And then I take this whole thing and I have to go back to this a higher level screen here to be able to export the solution. And then I would just go through the process again, exporting it and importing it, and telling it which site to go to, and then it would just import it on top as a new version of that solution. Let's see. Lisa says, does this mean we have to have full-blown Dataverse to use solutions? Isn't a license required? Well, no, we're not using any Dataverse data, Lisa. We're using SharePoint data. So the users that are using this Power App, it's just a SharePoint connector, and they're just like your apps that you already have that use SharePoint lists as the data. So now if you were using an actual Dataverse table, then you would then users would need to have that license, that higher license, to be able to use the app and the flows. But yeah, we didn't do that. We just used SharePoint. And if you were using Dataverse and you had in your solution, if you had, let's see, a new table, and you actually created Dataverse tables in here and use that as your data, the cool thing about those, and they're more expensive, but the cool thing about those is that then when you export the solution, all the data can go with it too as part of the solution, because the table's in there. The SharePoint list is not going to do that. The SharePoint list itself is not going to go with the solution. It's just a URL, just a link to the list, just a pointer.
Yeah, and Lisa had actually asked a question earlier where she asked if you make changes to the production SharePoint list, like does that affect the dev? And you kind of answered that, where it's not the dev list and the production list and SharePoint are two separate things.
Yeah,
like they're not connected
lists.
in any way.
So yeah, if you made changes, if you needed to make changes to the SharePoint list, I highly recommend making changes in both lists, and then you'd have to do it identical. So let's just do that just for fun, since we have a few more minutes left. Let me go back to my new hire list. So this is my developer list that you all have been adding people to. And then this is in the dev site. So I'll go add a new column. Oh, I didn't test the flow yet. That's what I need to do. So I'll add a new column, a person column, and I'll say manager. And notice I'm just typing manager. I have no spaces. I have no characters or anything. I have to remember exactly what I type here if I'm going to go to the other list and create it. So I'll say manager. And then I go over to the production site and do the exact same thing. Manager, save. And now I have manager in both lists, but then I need to put it in the Power App. So let's go to, I have my dev here. And here's my dev Power App. Okay, and then I would need to, if I already had the Power App open and I made a change like that, I would need to go refresh the data. But the data, it's going to know that there's the manager in there. So what I can do is just an extra step here. Since I want to test the flow that's going to run when a new item is created, I'll go ahead and insert a button. new hire form, and then a new screen really quickly. And I'm not even going to bother naming these. I'm just going to put a form on here. Delete that, it's ugly. And need to put a submit button. Submit form. That's the only form I have. And then when they click this button, it needs to send the new form command and navigate to that other screen, which I would normally be naming properly. And then we'll fill it out. So I'll, instead of closing it and all that, I'll just test it real quick. So this is going to be a SharePoint admin, Sam Smith, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. Don't care what their age is. And then the manager, I'll put me, submit. Now, I didn't set it up to do anything after I submit it, so it just stays on that screen. It's just another extra step I didn't do. Okay, so now, do I have that? Yeah, so there's SharePoint admin. That's the one I just added. So that should have sent me an email in my little fake tenant here. I don't know. Well, we'll have to go look at the flow. Sometimes flows take a couple of minutes to run. I can hear it. I just heard the notification. Here we go. Thanks for creating the new hire Sam Smith. So that flow works. That's the one in dev. So let's go. Okay, so close that. So this is that is saved. I'll publish it because I've made some changes and I want those changes to be published before I take it to the other environment. So then now that I publish it, I go back. In the real world, you'd want to make those little extra notes when you publish it too. So now this whole thing is ready to just export again. I didn't give you all access to the production site. I can do that in a second. So I'll just do unmanaged. And then it's exporting it, and I can give you all access to this too. I usually try to remember to give people contribute permission and not edit when I'm doing this. Edit means they can edit the whole site and all the columns and everything. Power Hour members contribute. Okay. Okay, little hackers. Now you have access to it. Okay, so then we've got my solution. It says it was exporting. And now it says it's ready. I'll download it again, and it's going to be another version. So it says 1.0.0.2. So it added a version. Now, when you're on that export screen, you can type the actual version number there too. So then it exported it, and then I would go over to switching over to my production environment, and then I'll go import it, browse. So that now I've got, see, this one's got like a number 2 in it here. It's the second version. I think y'all get the gist. Is that a singer? Did I just make up somebody's name, but it's an actual singer? That's funny. I didn't know that. This solution package contains an update for a solution that's already installed. Yep, I know that. So then it's importing that one. So then now the question is my one that was published in dev, is it already going to be published in production? I would think it would be. And who's it going to be shared with in production? Is it going to be shared with all the same people? We can go check that out too. So it says currently importing that. So we can go double check that. What do you think? Are you all going to start trying to do this when you create new business solutions? Just go in and create solutions as just at least to use them as folders to organize things. It doesn't cost an extra license just to use solutions. It's really just like creating a folder. But when you start creating other environments, that's when you could potentially, watch out for extra costs in that. So, but if you're
There's a couple
creating,
questions that we may have missed. I think Roseanne asked, do you recommend removing the dev environment each time or keeping it active? I guess it just depends on your protocol.
Most people just kind of leave it there. I mean, if you are just paying for if you're just doing a trial of the dev environment, it automatically deletes itself after 90 days. So then that would be tricky, because then when you make changes later, you'd have to create a brand new solution in the dev environment to import on top of production to a solution that you already created, which I don't know if it works that way. That sounds like it might be really awkward. So I don't think deleting the entire environment and the entire dev solution is a good idea if you think you ever want to be able to make changes in the future and test them in dev. Okay, so I've got my...
And there was another question a lot earlier when you were working on like the SharePoint list, and I was saving it because it wasn't specifically related to solutions. But the question was, if they have a SharePoint list that they users have contribute access to because of the Power App, but they don't want that SharePoint list to show up on like the lists in the Lists app, is there anything that they could do?
Yeah, there's a PowerShell script you can use to run to completely hide the list. But beware, if you do that, at least one of the negatives to that is that if you have any lookup fields, lookup columns to that list from other lists, it will disappear as if it doesn't exist. So all those lookups will break. So I don't remember off the top of my head what the PowerShell command is. In my blog post called Power Apps as a Front End on wonderlara.com, I think at the bottom of that post, I've got a link to somebody else's post that talks about how to do the PowerShell script. So yeah, that's just off the top of my head where I know it exists, where I think it exists.
I'll look for that.
So just for the record, this production one, it had not shared the app with anyone. So this is, it's only shared with me, the owner. I don't think sharing it with Power Hour users is going to do any good, because that's not going to cover all the people that are in that actual members of the Power Hour, because that's not a Microsoft 365 group. Okay, so now let's try that one out. Ooh, let's see, I opened it up and it's still, okay, it still looks like the old one, but I've seen that happen before. Let me go back to, so this is, I've seen that happen before. After you publish changes, you have to like open it up a couple of times. Yeah, there we go. So here is the production data. Notice it doesn't have all the extra ones that people had created. And I'll do a new hire tester. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I didn't create an arrow to take it back to the other list. So let's go see if that flow works, because that's going to be a separate flow in that other environment. And that, took a couple of seconds. So we'll go to flow.microsoft. So the first thing to look at when you go to Flow and Power Apps, if you've been doing this, switching back and forth, is look at what environment you're in up here. So I'm going to switch over to the production environment and zoom that in a little and go to look at my flows. And here's the new hire email. And it hasn't triggered yet. So those always take like up to 5 minutes to trigger, especially the first time for some reason. And it's telling me, this is a good information to have, is that if you're on a flow and it's in a solution, you'll see a link. You'll have a link to the solution right here. And it looks like that ran. And also something I've noticed just working on flows that are in solutions is that you'll get flow checker errors if you start using connection references, like when you're in your flow and you're picking like the name of a SharePoint list here and things like that in your actions. If you just directly pick the names of just the direct URL to SharePoint list, the flow checker will give you a warning saying flows that are inside a solution really do need to use an environment variable. Try to pick one of those instead. So that's something you'll notice. And here is the flow that is in production. So the test and the production flows all work. So let me switch back to, all right, wow, we got a lot crammed in there. That was some good testing, good conversation too. So let's see, solutions. Oh, Nick says solutions allow you to group all aspects of your app flow, environment variables, connection references, and easily export them from dev to production. And if you do it as a managed solution, like he's mentioning, then you prevent changes being made when you over in the production. So you're not going to have some rogue developer directly changing that production version of it. They're not going to be able to. You can only make changes in dev if you do it as managed. Pretty cool. And I know we've all worked at companies where you got people going rogue and doing things that didn't go through QA, right? So this is how you can prevent that. Yeah, so this is like Oliver mentioned, this is a really great solution for any business solutions you're creating that are going to have multiple Canvas apps and flows involved all in the same solution. One thing you can do is name the names that you give your Power Apps and your flows, kind of have a good naming convention that kind of will group them all together and make it obvious what they are. But also, if you put them all in a solution, you don't have to go searching through all of your lists of flows and apps every time you want to go work on one of these, because they'll just be right there in the solution folder. All right. So, that's all I have. You have rogue makers. Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. Rogue. All right. Well, we have, let's see, I'll go to iwmentor.com and look at our schedule. What do we have going on? Let's see. Power Hour is on most Wednesdays at 11 Central. The next one is going to be March 1st. And you can get to that by looking at our schedule page on iwmentor.com. And we have lots and lots of Power Apps and Power Automate SharePoint training. So check it out. Thanks everybody for coming today. Over and out. Have a great